Hey everyone, welcome to the 423rd episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Caroline Craighead and Charles Coleman. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Enlow. Today we've got director Hannah Lux Davis on the show. And I'll be honest, I nerded out a little bit. I'm a longtime fan. When we got the email that they were like, hey, would you like Hannah on the show? I was like, yes, so excited. Oren and I had a long debate about who said yes first. And in so researching the debate, we realized that I made HannahLuxDavis.com my unpaid endorsement on episode 16 of this show.
I mean, way before you had kids. It was like before I had kids.
Pre-pandemic, pre-children. We didn't know what Zoom was. I think that Hannah is the sort of director that just has this ability to take an incredibly pop sensibility and turn it into something both universal and unique, and like high style and low style, gritty and edgy and slick all at once in a way that's really exciting and cool. It's a long conversation. It's the sort of conversation that keeps us doing the show. Like, it's really fun. It's really easy. It feels like we've known her for a long time. Kind of have shared DNA and that we were all kind of coming up at the same time with the same reference points and stuff. So it was just a quick, easy conversation. We get into a lot of backstory, but also a lot of nuggets along the way on how she achieves the look that she does, and more the vibe. It's more about like her approach as a director, how she books work, how she works with talent. That sort of evolution is really the crux of the conversation.
Yeah, I think kind of the most interesting thing I took away is her journey is, first of all, it's something super repeatable, like other people. You know, she basically just found work on set to be close to other directors and meet people. But she went in through the makeup department, which is like really cool, because something that's like really good in all her work is like the hair and makeup and styling. And I don't know if you would necessarily think that as like a film student, like, oh, maybe I should study makeup in order to have a way into the film industry. She did, and she kind of nailed it.
The other thing that I loved about the conversation was that she has like just like a different vocabulary than we do. You know, she would say things like gloss or high fashion, or just like kind of like stuff that's more out of the world of music video and editorial work. And, you know, as a pair of, you know, dudes who came up in Funny or Die and College Humor and like sketch comedy, you know, it's there's a lot of overlap between our worlds. It's mostly overlap, but the differences I find really fascinating.
It's cool to talk to her, and it always makes me feel good that it's a hard job for anyone. You know, I think you have this illusion that's like, if you're kind of a known brand name director that's done all this famous work, it's really easy for you to get more work. And even, you know, we talk about that, like it's never easy. It's always a battle to get hired, to get people to care about who you are and what you bring to the table. She's obviously good at it, and it was really fun talking to her. So before we get into our chat, just want to remind people that we do have a Patreon page, patreon.com/justshootitpod, where big percentage of what you guys give us goes to pay for the editing, pay for the show, get this thing going, letting us know people care about it and are listening. So check it out, patreon.com/justshootitpod. We'd be forever grateful to you if you just dropped $1 or $2.
Without further delay, let's hop into our conversation with Hannah Lux Davis.
Hello, we're here with Hannah Lux Davis. Thanks for making this work.
Thank you guys for having me. Such a fan.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
We're the fans, okay?
I mean, you guys are great.
I only have one question, which is like, when are you going to ever work with anyone we've heard of?
Oh, right. I know.
Halsey, Ariana, who are these people?
I mean, they're just like little artists, independent artists, you know, that are just trying to make it.
Your work is amazing. We already talked about it. Matt watched one of your videos 10 times, which is his big accomplishment.
Maybe 20, 30. With it, 10 isn't enough for Oren. I set it off, Mike. I'll say it again. That Cool for the Summer video is really great. It's really, really great.
You gave us like a tiny preview before we started recording, but how did you get to where you are?
I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and I grew up in the heyday of music videos. So like when I was 13, 14, I was like MTV was the biggest thing ever. TRL was the biggest thing ever. I would race home and be like, what's on the countdown? And I was obsessed with music videos. I could feel how big their power was to just like skyrocket an artist. And I just loved them. And so I knew.
Were you sorry, going off the rails immediately. Do you think you have to be like into music to be into music videos? Like, are those two things, like, do you have to be like, have a musical instincts to be good at music videos? Or do you think it's kind of unrelated?
I do think you have to have a love for music. I grew up playing the drums, so I had like a bit of a musical background. My younger sister is a singer, and so she would always be performing. So I grew up kind of watching her on the stage and sort of just watching her just perform. And, you know, it was kind of around me. And I think you do have to love music because you have to understand, you know, the meaning behind the song and the feeling behind the song and what the artist is trying to convey. And, you know, it's my job as a director to help them visually articulate it. And so if I wasn't a music fan, I think it'd be pretty tough to do that job and be passionate about it for sure. You have to be able to relate to it. And I always find that like, it's like a fan of music. Like if you're not like liking what you're hearing, how can you be a fan of that artist or that song? And it's like, I can't imagine, like if I get a track and it's sent to me and I just can't stand the song, which happened to me a lot in the beginning of my career. Like it was like the worst music. And I'm like, I just like, but at the beginning.
And that was when you had to take a job.
Yeah. And you had to like take the job. And so it's just like, it's unfortunate. But now I'm like, if I literally hate the song, which is very, very rare. I can't remember the last time
Oh man. Did you see Dear Producer? One of our previous guests, Rebecca Green, she has like a producing podcast and platform. She just talks about like the state of producing, especially like indie producing. And
interesting.
She put out this list of like all the producers since January 1st, 2024 that announced projects like on deadline that are basically movie stars.
Wow.
She's like, now basically all the producers are, you know, I mean, there are like the Margot Robbies that are like really producers, but then there are a lot of people who just like, by being attached to
put their name on something.
Yeah, we don't need to make it a big detour, but I think that undercuts the value that a movie star has in getting a movie made, which is producing. Like, it's not like they're in the weeds on a budget necessarily, or like out making deals in quite the same way, but like, you know.
Yeah, they're just helping put the pieces in place. Like, I really want to work with that wardrobe stylist. Let's get them on this. Yeah. I love that production designer from that film. Let's get them on this. Like, I hear about that, but obviously I don't have any first-hand experience in that per se, but that's what I assume a lot of those celebrities are doing. But
because we do see a lot of music videos directed by the artist nowadays, right? Especially if they have like...
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of that happening more than ever. And I have to assume it's their idea. And I get into a lot of co-directing situations with artists, like I did with Halsey, I did with Doja Cat on Agora Hills. And a lot of the times they're not, you know, on these tech scouts doing a shot list, meeting with the DP. They're not doing any of that. They just want to make sure that like at the end of the day, they're like really involved with the cut. They're involved with what they're doing. And they maybe have like more like a nugget of an idea they've thrown your way. So they feel this, you know, deep sense of ownership. You know, it's not like they're at monitor with me watching a take of something that they're not involved with in that scene. It's unfortunately, but you know, we as directors in music videos are like, whatever, let's just get the job. Let's do the job. You know, I think at the end of the day, a lot of people in the industry understand that, like our peers kind of get it. But when you see somebody like, and I don't know the ins and outs of this particular artist, but like a Taylor Swift, for example, I have to assume because she's so incredibly smart that she's actually like doing all those things. And you can see a lot of the behind the scenes and the project she's done, that she's like really shot listing, really working with the DP, really, you know, writing these concepts like head to toe. So
she's like an insane workaholic too.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, and I imagine at a certain point you know, it's an incremental step of like, oh, okay, like your first music video, you maybe didn't like the way the cut turned out. So you end up like asking to be a part of it as you gain more traction. And then before you know it, but through osmosis, you figured out a lot of the things that it takes to be a good director.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
you know, so it makes sense that like some people would, you know, really step into it and own it. And like, I think, you know, when you're at a certain caliber, you get to work with the most inspiring and incredible directors out there. So of course you're like, oh yeah, like
I can do that. Like you're shadowing great people.
Mark Romanek.
Yeah, I mean, what a school in itself. So I assume that's what's happening. And, you hear that, you see that a lot also with, actor turned directors. So,
Sure.
like
whenever I work with like celebrity talent, there's usually a bunch of people that are trying to coddle them from like an agency and PR and all. And like, oh, they don't need to know about that and don't waste their time. And I'm like, this person was on 400 episodes of a TV show. She knows way more about filmmaking than any of us.
Yeah, for real.
We don't need to like not tell her like what is going on.
Yeah.
So it is.
They're a lot savvier. I'm speaking as if they're like these aliens, like these celebrities and artists, but like they're a lot savvier than I think a lot of people give them credit for.
So you went from Seattle to
so Seattle.
Film school.
Right away, I knew I wasn't going to go to like a crazy college. I didn't even bother applying to like any normal like college, and I just went right to a vocational school in LA called the New York Film Academy.
So funny to think of that as a vocational school because, we meet a lot of people that went to various film schools, like from the USC, AFIs, NYUs, and a lot of the New York Film Academy, or the Full Sails are like these places that are, you're learning the same thing, right?
I think it's just less because I consider it less because you're not taking all these other courses and it's not like this 4-year commitment. It's literally like you're going to go in there, learn the job, and then you're out. I did the film school for a year there. I was only 18, so I was like a baby. And then while I was there, I discovered the LA Film School, like in Hollywood. And so I ended up doing that for a year. I vaguely remember the projects we did. And it was just so short. And there was nobody you could be like, oh, I'm going to make a connection with a producer. I'm going to make a connection with a DP. And then, so while I was living in LA, I discovered the LA Film School, decided to enroll in that like the very next, year, just like I was in school, And so I did that. And it was like at that school, it was a much bigger class. There might've been like 75 of us. And it was a mix of people who wanted to be like, at the first day, everybody was like, okay, raise your hand what's your major, directing majors. And like, obviously a lot of hands went up, but then like cinematography, hands went up, production designer, hands went up. And I was an editing major and a directing minor. I chose editing just because I wanted to like double down on something technical. I wish I had doubled down on directing and like dove more into like screenwriting because I like didn't. And it was definitely like a hands-on production focused environment, but I was only 19 living in LA. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's like such a long time ago. There was no YouTube. There was no Instagram, social media, like Facebook had just started to kick off. It was like a different time. So when
but that's kind of like an advantage, right? Because you're not doom scrolling. You're
totally
just making your stuff.
You're not doom scrolling, but it still was, you didn't feel like now you feel like you can connect with people so easily and, find people. Entering the workforce now, I feel like must feel so different because you can just see who's making what at, the click of a finger. You can just like find, okay, what's that video I like? Oh, who produced that? Okay. Who shot that? Everybody's tagging everything on Instagram and you're just able to just connect with people. And so I was able to meet people there and like work on projects. And then I was like editing for a lot of people. I was production design. I did, first AD for some projects. Like, it was a bunch of stuff. You got to really get your hands on a lot of projects. But this is also a time when music videos and commercial directing, like that was like, what do you mean you want to even like think about that? And in film school, you have to be also a writer. You have to write your own project. So as somebody who, I was not a writer, I knew I wasn't a writer. Now I write like every day, for videos and commercials, and I'm doing, developing for like features and, making script notes and whatnot. So I'm always like writing now, but back then I just wasn't. So the idea of writing a short film and then directing that in film school was like out of the question for me. I was like, I can't even fathom that. So I decided to do music videos as my thesis. And all the teachers were like, what are you doing? This is such a mistake. Like, and they all just kind of,
when you say like more than one music video was your thesis?
Yeah, I took out a student loan. Oh my God, why did I do that? Because at the time, my grandparents, luckily they paid for my schooling, bless them. But I took out a loan just for making the thesis. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take out the maximum loan I can get. I'm going to make 3 videos. We're going to shoot on film. It's going to be so sick. And
is it okay? Do you want to say the number or an approximate like number of like what you were spending? Just
yeah, I know I spent like 11,000 on one. I spent like 3,000 on one. Those are the 2 I remember. And then I think I went shopping at Wet Seal and Forever 21 for the rest of the money. But
and that's like twice. Like today, 11,000 is like 25,000.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I don't know where the money went now that I think about it, because we shot on film, we shot at a jail, we had dancers, and it was, the video is on YouTube. I could like send it or whatever.
Did you have artists and songs that you were making it?
So I found bands, and this is again like MySpace was kind of getting big at this point, and so I would find them on MySpace and this old website called Pure Volume, and I would just search for bands I liked that lived in Southern California, and I would be like, "Hey, I'd love to make your music video," and I just tried to find artists that I liked and music that I liked, and
you would pick the song, like you'd be like, I love this track, I have an idea for it.
I truly don't remember how I handled those conversations, because I was probably a complete idiot back then with like anything like business related.
The music play, if memory serves, the music player on MySpace, like the bands would always pick the sequence of like what song would play when. So they're probably playing what they thought of as their single as the first song you hear on their profile.
Right. But I have to imagine I was probably like, do you guys have a single? Or I can't imagine me being like, let me pick this song. You know what I mean? I'm sure they were like, this is the song we want to do. I mean, I remember it's so embarrassing. I remember getting to set, and the guy who I thought was the lead singer like played guitar, was in the background. And I was like, oh my God, I was so confused. I'm like, you're the hot guy.
This singer is so ugly.
And he wasn't ugly by any means. They were all very like cute guys, like probably like 18 to like 21 years old. And I just remember being like, oh no, like I was such an idiot. But it was a lot of fun. And I got to like, shoot on film, and nowadays that's so rare. And I cut the video for like 3 months. Yeah. So I had these 3 videos, and, like I said, my teachers were very like, what are you doing? This is such a mistake. And they didn't understand why I was doing it. And they didn't even know how to critique it. They weren't like music video fans, so they weren't like appreciative of any sort of art. They couldn't like recall a music video they'd even watched or liked. And I just remember being like, okay, this girl's going to be like moved to the back of like our priority list. I just remember feeling like I was such an outsider as soon as I chose that path. And it's funny.
Were you aware of like a band apart and like the like director's bureau and the fact that were places that made
I wasn't.
Videos?
This is like before I really knew about the game. This is like, I was 19 years old, and this was just like a different time. There was no website. There was a website called Video Static, which still exists, but
sure. Or I was going to say Antvil.
I remember Antvil, but I started to kind of get into that stuff like a little later, like I'd say more 2006, 2007. I was like, okay, 2008. I'm like, okay, yes, there's like a community. Like I found it, but not while I was like starting out.
Sure.
And so, it just felt very, very weird to be doing them. And then it's just funny now, because like I look at my class, my 2005 is what it was. And I'm probably the only director still really directing, like a working director from making music videos, so it's a good path. After I graduated and like later on down the line, they allowed me to like come back and like do projects and have like their students come work on it for free. And like
that's cool.
They were actually really supportive after I graduated, and they actually honored me in their like Spotlight Awards, on their like first ever Spotlight Awards a few years ago. And that was very sweet of them. And they're very supportive of me now. So shout out to LA Film School.
It's fascinating to me because we're basically about the same age. I'm a little bit older, and I did I was an intern. I cold called the director's bureau and was like, "Hey, can I hang out for 2 years?"
Wow.
And they were like, "I guess." And but it was always, artsy fartsy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like I had a music video on MTV U,
I remember that,
which was like, right, like, or like on Subterranean, and I've always admired your sensibility of like doing really like pop, like you just like, you're like, it is, how do you distill pop culture and pop energy into an aesthetic?
mm-hmm.
I would always think Hannah Lux Davis.
Oh,
and like I was always
such a compliment,
because it was like, no, truly I mean it. It was like I was always envious when like people would have a sensibility that was unique and clear and also appealing to a broad audience. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not like watering down a sensibility or pandering in any way. It always felt like, and this is purely just, me outside looking in, that like, oh, the thing that you like, other people also like. And like when I was trying to do it, indie rock, which was very popular as well.
Totally.
But wasn't like, they weren't chart toppers in the same way. And I was always like, man, I wish that I loved other stuff differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's funny to hear. I honestly, I always had this kind of vision of your career as like, oh, you just knew exactly how to do a thing that people really like. And it's fascinating to hear like, oh, no, you felt shunned as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much for those compliments. It's very, very kind of you to say. And I like to call that like commercial appeal, like,
sure.
I think my work, and that's how I describe myself when I go out for features, anything. I'm like, I feel like my work is very commercial. Like, I feel like, yes, it can be edgy, but it can also be just broadly enjoyed, and I can get like niche down and do grittier stuff. Like, you saw in my Doja Cat Agora Hills video, I did a video for Charli XCX called Good Ones. I have like some darker stuff, and Halsey Nightmare. Like I love that. Like those three are probably the videos that feel like the most me, which are that do tend to be a little darker. But I mean, when I started out, it's like, we talk about, how you're liking indie rock and how you wish you maybe enjoyed other things more or whatever. It's when I was starting out, pop music was not cool. Like I wasn't, and to do pop music is expensive. Like you can't just like make a pop video cheap. Like it doesn't, that doesn't translate. That doesn't translate with the music at all. Pop.
Can you just tell us for a second why you say that? Well,
because I think pop music needs to have like production value. It needs to have, the artist needs to look amazing. They need to be surrounded by an environment that is larger than life and makes them, look, quite godly. So I think on a low budget, we'll just talk about like Agora Hills for a second, because that's an example of a pop video, but it's shot in a way that is intended to look stripped back, raw. And we shot a lot of it on like a high-8 camera. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like it was like on some crazy, camera that was, like super high resolution and like really glossy. That was very stripped back. But you had a celebrity with great styling in front of your camera. And you
but you also start that off with like she's floating in the air on a suburban street that you close down,
which has production value. But if you look at the middle of the video, there's a setup when she's in this like darker liminal space. She has like this like the bald head, and she's just like dancing in these like baggy pants, and it's like this really sort of like low key, sort of tomboy feeling scene. And there's no production value. We're in like a shitty room at the K-Town Mall that's been like, demolished. It's not like anything of production value. And we have like a spotlight. So it's like that setup in itself was super low budget looking and feeling. And, obviously it took a lot of expensive toys and people to get us there. But that one setup was very cheap. So I think there are sort of exceptions to the rule, but I think when you have a celebrity and you put those scenarios together, like that's how it works. But if you're shooting some like nobody who doesn't have any star power yet, figuring out their look, maybe doesn't know like how to do their makeup and hair, and like they just haven't found their thing yet. You do that low budget look, and it's gonna not work for pop. So I think there's a formula that gets it there. But I mean, when I was starting out, like I was saying, pop music wasn't cool. I was doing these low budget videos, and $11,000, that was a lot of money for me back then. Cause after that I was like, okay, I got $500 budget. I got an $800 budget. Okay. We have $1,200. Okay. We have $3,000, $3,000. Let's do a 2-day shoot. You know what I mean? Like it was totally different. And so I was a lot of rock pop bands. It was like, you know, instruments, guys rocking out. You know, I was really into this like music scene in like Riverside, California, which was really random, but I just kind of got in with a crew of bands there. And then they, you know, they all had friends who were in bands, and it became like this like network of me to you know, just start out and make music videos for all these guys. But it was definitely not pop, not gloss, but it was a fun way to, I think, work on performance. And I was editing all these videos too. So I got a lot of practice. I started to need a producer. I was like, I can't produce. Like, I'm not like a money person. I'm not somebody who's going to make calls and get gear and tell people where to go and this and that and get the permits in. Like I was doing that, and I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And so I found a producer on Craigslist, you know, met up with a few of them at a coffee shop in Valley Village. And I remember this one girl came in, and she came with like this like pink little notebook and like a fuzzy pen. And I was like, you're my girl. I was like, and meanwhile I like met with people who were like all buttoned up, but for some reason I just had a good feeling about her. And she ended up being my producer for like a good run of stuff, you know, in like my 2006-2007 era.
And how do you like so the issue, right? When you're saying like you have a $3,000 budget and that's considered good, you obviously can't pay the producer on that budget.
I think, you know, we probably made like $300, $200, you know, who knows, but it was probably something, but not nothing. Truly, I remember a lot of the money went to like, okay, camera, we're feeding people, a permit,
and a location,
and like a permit and location, or we stole the locations. I stole a lot of locations. Do
you think nowadays, if somebody like wants to start a music video career like that, like how would they find a producer? It just seems like so difficult.
Kind of the same way, except for you wouldn't go on Craigslist. You would just go on Instagram and just, you know, what I tell people is to find production companies who are doing the work and see if you can just start PAing on those jobs and just like, hey, I'd love to PA. Oh my God, you can't pay me. Can I come to like an event you guys are doing and just like help set up, help clean up, whatever, just so I can like, I'd love to get in. And a lot of people love people who want to just help. So in any way, I think the rules or the laws are different now. Like you can't have people like working for free. Like, you know, like when I was starting out, I did a lot of like free, whatever, just to start meet people. And, but I think, you know, people are really generous with people who are eager to help out. And I think from there, I would just say, you know, start meeting the other PAs, start crewing up on things they're doing, then you'll kind of understand, okay, this person wants to be a producer. This person wants to be like a cinematographer. You kind of just know where people are wanting to navigate towards, and you can just kind of like line up with people that you like and you feel like you can start to work together. I would recommend that.
On this journey where you're doing all of these smaller videos, you're building momentum. I feel like that's a narrative. Like we can kind of see that trajectory. But I'm curious, was there a moment where you felt like, oh, this is my style. This is what I want. This is the first thing I want on my reel for the foreseeable future. Like I nailed it. This is my aesthetic, basically.
Yeah, I think it took a while to figure that out in terms of how can I achieve that? Because I think I always knew I loved pop. Like when I mean by pop, I mean like the Britney Spears videos, the Christina Aguilera, Missy Elliott videos. Like I knew I loved like good looking stuff, you know, like that always had like gloss, dance, great fashion, just beautiful cinematography, just like eye-catching, you know, eye candy, right? So I think I knew what I wanted to do. It was just really hard to then get book a job that allowed you to play in that arena. And that just takes a lot of time. And so I think what I did was I went to makeup school after my last film school because I was like, I need to get on set. And it can't be just by PAing, because sometimes when you're a PA, and this is like a long time ago. So when I was a girl PA, it was really hard to just like talk to people. It was a different world back then. And I think now, it's different. I would hope. But back then I was like, I need to get on set and like be in a position where I can just kind of understand what's happening around me, be working more with the creative heads in terms of, having conversations, seeing what the treatments were, and just kind of being involved in like a little bit of the pre-production and understanding of how it works. And so makeup was a way for me to get on set. And so I did that. I also was editing for a lot of directors, which was a great learning tool.
And so was there a breakout video or artist or something that you got that kind of like leveled you up to
a tipping point?
A place where people are like, ooh, who did this video?
I started to get traction as a director when I got a producer, and then that producer introduced me to somebody who had a production company, and that production company was like, okay, we can maybe have you like on our roster, and and then you'll have like, this is your rep. So then I got a director's rep. This is so crazy,
like
but
the person that repped the company for music.
Yes, this is so crazy. I don't even remember my first rep's name, which I should. But yeah, so I got a rep, and then from there, so labels would like work with these, reps and send them, okay, we have this track, there's this artist, $15,000 budget, who can write a treatment for this? So then I became like one of those directors who's just writing treatments for everything that comes in, and this is like, you have no idea who you're up against. It could be 20 directors for all you know, and you're just like writing treatments constantly.
And in those days, is it mainly writing? I mean, obviously nowadays it's like an explosion of visual candy, but at the time, was it like, here's 3 images and like 10 paragraphs of what happens
in a Word document?
Verse? Yes. No, when I started out, it was a Word document. There was no like flashy, Adobe situation that, all the treatments are now. It's so crazy to see where treatments came from. Like a lot of people starting out now have no idea like the shitty treatments that we used to do. But yeah, it was just a Word document.
I miss them. I'm a better writer than I am a Photoshop artist or layout artist.
I mean, it's so crazy to think about. I'd be like, and on the top, it'd be like, Lux Davis, director. And it'd be like, so just like a class paper. It was so like formal.
While you've signed to this company and where we are in your career, I can't help but imagine the budgets are shrinking pretty drastically, right? Like the bottom of music videos falls out by like 2010, right?
Yeah.
Give or take?
Yeah, give or take. I feel like I obviously was very aware of all this, but I never felt it because I was starting out when it was shitty. So I never was like, oh, here's your opportunity at the beginning of your career to have this like even $500,000 budget. Oh, now it's down to 30. Like I didn't have like that big drastic change. I was coming off of film school and paying for videos. So I didn't really know any better. So I was one of the generation, in the generation where we were almost like in the advantage because we didn't know any better.
You had low expectations.
And we were young enough that it was okay to be broke.
Exactly. So it wasn't like it was really hitting me in that way. But I mean, these were, tiny budgets. I mean, I didn't know where money went. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know how to do treatments. I remember I had just like the worst visual pulls. It was like, there was no Pinterest back then. There was nothing like that. So it was just, be doing Google search. I remember I was an intern at Revolver Films in 2000, I think it was 6. And I took that internship because I was obsessed with Floria Sigismondi, obviously this incredible music video director. And I interned at that company for a summer, and that was probably my best sort of learning experience because I was involved with, a few of the productions that happened, and I was able to see how treatments were somewhat made. But again, these were Google days. This is also a time when people were like, okay, we're going to print this treatment, put it in a leather bound book and deliver it. Like some people were
Right.
even doing those crazy things. So
yeah. And you wouldn't, I mean, nowadays it's like, obviously post COVID, just we show everyone everything on these calls. And at the very least, they see our face and we're like, and then this happens. And then that, and we're trying to sell some energy through. But in those days, yeah, it's like, just here's some words.
Truly bless Zoom and like, being able to do all of these like show and tells on Zoom and like sharing decks on Zoom. I started out in commercials pre-Zoom era. So I was like a baby commercial pitching, on big commercials. And I remember I was on like a commercial for like Facebook and we were pitching the treatment and it was like, okay, now go to page this. Yeah. That picture on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That one. Okay. The one below it. And you're just kind of like describing, like, I remember being on these calls and not being able to hear people and see who was talking. And I remember that just being so confusing. And I can't believe that's how things were done. Because now we're like meeting the agency, pitching our idea, like we are right now, just looking at each other and like, okay, I'm going to share my screen. Cool. You guys can see it. Man.
I like literally have Midjourney up when I'm like talking to people, and I like on a creative brief, I'm like, oh, kind of like a island full of dogs, maybe something like this.
Yeah, got it.
And it's like,
it's so great.
Or even just like knowing that someone's laughing at your jokes.
Yeah.
Like Oren and I work in comedy. So like there's a little bit of a expectation that we should be funny.
Right.
And so like
people laugh at yourself.
Never. Yeah, sometimes, Oren, sometimes. No, yeah, but also you don't know. Do you know? Like I have a couple, standards up my sleeve that I'll use if things are flagging in some way, and like when that conference call is all on mute, you're just like, well.
You just have nothing. You have nothing to
that happened.
Go off of it. Yeah. It's like so tricky. So it's funny though. The commercial world has jumped all over it, but music artists, they're not taking the time to like get on.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like you're not sharing treatments like that at all. Like you're literally sending them into an abyss and like hoping they're like kind of reading. It's like such a jump. And I can talk about this, just a quick tangent of just like commercial treatments. It's like, yeah, you can get into the weeds and really describe and make sure you put all that personality into every sentence and really go into just like, okay, this is the vision for this. This is the vision for this. And they can hear it in the tone of like every sentence of like what you plan to do. But with music videos, it's like less is more. This happens, this happens, this happens. Pictures. And it's like, you don't want to overwhelm them with words because you want to leave it to their imagination, an artist's imagination. But with commercials, you want there to be a little of imagination so they can like, oh yeah, we really love this. Just thinking in their own heads, but you want to spell out everything in a way that's like so prescriptive. So it's tricky jumping back and forth between those two as often as I do.
It makes me curious about, because we haven't had a ton of music video directors on in the 400 plus episodes we've done the show. How have you seen things change in the last 10 or so years? Like I feel like they're like we were talking about, like, oh, everything's kind of bottomed out, but now music videos are back in a pretty meaningful and impactful way. But I don't really know the landscape anymore. Like, walk us through it a little bit.
The landscape is definitely rocky. It's not like it's that, everybody's set. It's like artists these days are not spending money at all like they used to. And it really comes down to, okay, you want to make this video? Like, we better find some product placement to back this because the label's putting in like 100K. You know what I mean? You just, as like an example, you just don't know. And like, as a director, obviously your standards are high, but you know that the artists and like the fans, like those standards are even higher. Right. And you want to just like do a good job so you can just continue to work because it is just so competitive. And I do feel like the industry is really sort of leveled out now. Like before it was like, oh, you need an established director will work with a big artist. But now it's like anybody can just get up in there and do a big artist because they have a connection to the artist. And it doesn't really matter if you've like never really directed much before. It just sort of can like happen that way. And people love to work with their friends. They love to work with people on their teams. You'll see a lot of behind the scenes directors suddenly be like the director for that artist. And
Interesting.
yeah, and I feel like, I think fans I think they're savvy to like product placement, so they understand it, but that doesn't mean it's excusable. So you have to just like really try and weave in product placement in a way that feels like it's part of the story. It's not a road bump. And that can be really tricky because sometimes product placement is thrown at you 2 days before the shoot. And you're like, fuck, I have to work this car in? Like, are you kidding me? It can be really tricky. But I think that that's like the biggest change in the landscape I've seen. And I think also talent. I think talent is different. It's not like we have these big icons anymore. It's like you have people that are blowing up on TikTok that suddenly we're being told that they're the star. They're the artist. And like, they're so green. They don't have a lot of experience. And, it does pay off, like down the line, but they jump out the gate in a way that like, we're all supposed to be like, oh, they're a huge celebrity when they just blew up on TikTok.
Yeah. Well, and you realize that like, it takes practice to be good at being famous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the reps of, all sorts of different things, whether it's shooting music videos or making appearances or performing on stage. Like if you've toured and, you've done a few videos, that's a very marked difference than somebody who, is a super talented and just shot incredible videos, in their bedroom or whatever. Like that's, and obviously you can start in your bedroom and make great things, but like the reps is part of, so are there things that you do when you're working with someone who's a little greener? Like, is there a way you can kind of impart some of the moves of the superstars you've worked with? What do you do when you're kind of in that position?
I think a good example of that was Doja Cat. I worked with her on her Say So music video in the very beginning of 2020. We shot in like February, I think. And
well timed.
I know. Oh my God. And then I went, and then right from that shoot, I went to Australia and I shot some videos for 5 Seconds of Summer. It was right after like the wildfires. And it was like, oh my God, Australia. And then like, we're in Australia for 2 weeks and then we come back and then like the world shuts down. Yeah. Australia, who? But it was, that was wild. But yeah, with Doja Cat, she was an artist who, she's definitely an anomaly because she's such a star now. And I think that she grew into that. You know what I mean? That's an example of like an artist who she had made videos before, but not in the scale in which we were shooting. And like, I wanted a beauty video, a dance video. And it was, sort of like a fun conceptual video that was kind of a period piece. And, she was all a part of the conversations when it came to the creative as well. It wasn't like I was putting this on her, but, working with her, it was like she was just new in front of the camera. She didn't have as much experience. She was still a star. It was still obvious she was a star, but the experience wasn't there yet with just like how to
what do I do with my hands?
Not really that, more just like opening to camera and like feeling the light and understanding her angles and her, all of that with the lens and like, okay, this is like a long lens, beauty lens, we can't have you moving around a whole bunch, right? Like just there's things that come with somebody where like, okay, where's my light? Okay, there's the lens. And they just like know what to do. And they, and she was new, but like I worked with her, throughout the years now, and she's just like such a pro. So
this was the first time you worked with Doja Cat in February 2020. She's like a newer artist. Can you just give us like a bit of like how you get a track, you get a preview of who this artist is. How do you come up with a pitch?
With Doja Cat, I knew her stylist, Brett Ellen Nelson, who is still her stylist and creative director. And we'd known each other for years. We've known each other for a while, just doing projects. And we always have like a very similar taste. And, we like what each other do. And so he was like, you should work with Hannah. Like you guys will totally hit it off, like very like similar aesthetics, and she'll make you look amazing. So
this was not coming through reps, like triple bid, any of that.
No. And this is what I'm saying. It's no longer like, okay, here's like this sort of like, here's some directors, here's a treatment. Okay, we're picking this. It's like, you got a fucking back door, side door. It's like to book jobs these days. It's really rare to go the route of like, okay, we're asking for 4 directors and this is like, the brief. We want it to be, there's the budget. We want it to be a narrative video, or we want it to be a dance video, or we want something with, playful colors. They'll kind of give you a brief of what they're looking for. And it's nice when they kind of give you some guidelines of like, okay, this is sort of a box you can be in. But that can also be like working against you, because somebody can come in and write something that's like, wow, it's so different from the other ones. I like this.
Sure,
so it's such a game we play. But yeah, there's just really no transparency anymore in who's doing what and what directors are writing on what, and like who the manager may be talking to and who the artist has connections with. And you just never know these days. And I feel like now it's just like, you really have to have, like, the director has to have that relationship. And that's what books you the job. It's really tough. So, like, truly every video I hear about, it's like a single bid, situation where like the artist just wants that director, or they know that director and they just want to work with somebody they know. It's really rare to like come in just with a great idea. So,
but being that director is pretty awesome, right?
It is,
like being in your
but
shoes.
It doesn't, but it's hard for everybody right now. Like, especially the industry right now is a very slow time. It's a weird time. And there's not a lot of artists doing big budget videos. So you really just got to like jump on the ones when you can. And it's different. But for this,
but in those single bid scenarios, like Doja Cat comes to you and says, here's my track, here's what I'm thinking. Instead of you being like, okay, what's the right thing to say? What's the wrong thing to say? How do I win this? How do I beat out the other people? How do I seem fresh and unique? You can actually just
have a conversation,
take a breath and be like, yeah, well, I've been really into this thing recently and I see you as this thing. And even just the way you're like, this is a beauty video, this is a dance video. Like we can tell that you're really good at kind of pitching big concept, like kind of top line concepts to kind of come down from. Can you tell us like,
truly the hardest part of the gig as a director is communication, how you communicate to each person that you're dealing with, to the artist, to the manager, to the label, to the commissioner, everybody. It's just like, that is the game, is how you communicate. And it's something, I still am like, oh, I'm flubbing this. I'm struggling at this. I'm not going into it like completely confident. It's something that you just really have to just have a lot of experience under your belt to just have okay, I'm going to approach it like this. Okay, last time when I approached this artist like this, that didn't work. And what I mean by that is sometimes you have to just read the situation and be like, okay, this artist really just wants to be heard. Like, that's what this artist wants. And most of them just want to be heard. They just want to have their ideas heard and not just be told what to do. It's really rare that you'll have an artist that's like, I don't have any ideas, just like what, it's usually they have something and they just don't really know how to articulate it. So as a director, you have to like ask a lot of questions and like really investigate, what their interests are at that moment, what the song means. And usually a lot of the times it's not even about the song for them. It's just something they want to do. And then it's your job as a director to like try and make it work with the song.
Sure.
So, but yeah, for that Doja Cat one, it's just like, I was, they gave me the song Say So, and it was obviously a huge smash. It had already blown up on TikTok. There was dances. It was like the song of TikTok at that time. And it really made her whole career explode. So I know she wanted. And
did she have any like kind of self-shot video or anything for it?
No, she didn't, but other people had made up dances to it. So that became like this viral thing. So we wanted to put in that original TikToker who created the dance for Say So. And so we put her in the video. That was part of the choreography. Her choreographer, Cortland, worked in that choreography that they did, like using the original TikTok one. So that made it like a nice, splashy, fun, viral moment for like the fans to really latch on to. But working on that, Doja came in, I think she wanted something in like a 70s feel. And she wanted like roller skating. We didn't do that. And she wanted the girls to be like a very distinct, like specific color palette. Like she's like, I want this girl to only be in yellow, this girl to be in green, this girl to be in blue. And like, she was very specific about that. But other than that, I kind of created this like mini narrative that she latched onto and was cool with. But, that was tricky. And yeah, I know you asked, like, how do you work with these like newer artists? Over the years, I've learned you just really cannot give them a lot to do. But that also depends. Like some artists need a lot of business, like just giving like an actor just something to do. So they're not just like saying the lines or just standing there. And with her, it was, maybe it was too much to do at some points. And then I was like over directing her, like during the take, I'm like, okay, grab the ice. Okay, now you're looking at him. Okay, now you're putting the ice in the glass. Like these sort of things. As my first time working with her, the very first scene up, that probably wasn't the best thing to start with. Because here she is working with me, like, who the fuck is this girl telling me what to do, like every second?
Yeah,
and like,
I'll pick up the ice when I want to.
Yeah, but it also needed
cool.
like some like specific things happening for the scene. And so it was just like probably not the smartest thing for me to have started with. And meanwhile, we have like the commissioner behind me, like, yeah, woo, and I'm like, shh, she needs to hear what I'm saying with the ice cubes. And it was just so stupid. And then I'm like,
wait, sorry, what's the commissioner?
The commissioner works for the label, and so they work for the label, and they oversee the job and like the budget and making sure the artist is happy and heard and taken care of. And they're kind of like, for lack of a better word, the middleman of like the production company and the artist and getting the job done.
They're like the agency producer.
Yeah.
How involved are you in like the styling? Because I mean, obviously you said you met Doja through her stylist. Like she obviously has like very kind of interesting like outfits in
I think it's every job is very different. Like I always say, like I'll do mood boards for everybody. Like on my shoots, everybody will have like hair, makeup, and wardrobe notes like per cast. Like if we have like 10 featured people, each person's gonna have a whole page dedicated to them with like hair, makeup,
that you're making yourself.
Yeah, me and my team, my creative team. So we'll put that together so everybody knows exactly what that person's wearing. And then we'll do that for the artist too. And then we'll kind of work with the stylist and the artist and be like, okay, this is kind of what I'm thinking. For this scene, you're going to be standing on this, and make sure you're not wearing anything that's like going to be compromising here or there. And you're just kind of giving them the parameters of what some of the setups are going to be. Like, hey, don't wear green here. We might be shooting on green screen or whatever. And then I'll work with the stylist, a lot of back and forth on that so they can pull the right things for the fitting. But if it's somebody like a Nicki Minaj, I'm not telling her how to do her hair or what to wear. You know what I mean? Like that just wouldn't be, it's tricky because I do that still. I still will give her some sort of like, here's kind of what I'm thinking. Does she look at it?
Or at least inspiration, right? This scene's about this. So maybe you're like wild here and maybe you're more put together here.
Yeah.
Do you sidebar with the stylists at all or anything like that? Or?
Oh yeah, of course. I get on like a group text with their whole glam team. Sometimes it depends though on the artist, with like a Nicki, for example, you kind of don't really know, and you're just sending it off into an abyss, and you just hope that they just show up, and you're like, please show up. So but I'll still put them together. I just don't know if sometimes they're looked at. But again,
is it different for a commercial?
No, for the commercial, it's the same thing. You really have to, I put together, mood boards, and usually if it's like if there's like a celebrity, they definitely need to know what to do, because it's not like it's there as if they're a celebrity coming into a commercial, there's usually some parameters from the client of like what needs to be done. But for a music video, it's like their choice. It's their video. It's them. So I have a little less say there. But yeah, I'm pretty hands-on in that department for sure. And I sure people may feel like, oh yeah, you have a makeup background, that's why you like to do it. No, I just think that's just part of my world building, is like that aspect of it.
Yeah, because I think certainly when you describe like those Britney videos, for instance, from back in the day, the look is so much, like the styling is so much of those videos. That's what part of what makes them iconic, right? And so it's like, it's that back and forth of like, oh, of course the superstar has has complete control over their image and should, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also as a director, we're all a little bit of a control freak, right?
Yeah.
Like, if Nicki Minaj shows up with a 12-foot long ponytail or something like that, you want to know about it in advance because you would lens it differently.
Right. And if you're on like
and
green screen or something, like you can't
Sure.
have like a million flyaways, and then like all of a sudden you can't have wind, and the hairstyle needs wind, or like all these things. Yeah.
In the Say So video, you have like some visual effects, like where her arms are moving and there's like the echo effects and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Are those things that you think of ahead of time and you kind of pitch them as an idea, or do some of those things come in post where you're like, ooh, what can we add in here?
Yeah, great question. That time I did plan that one out. But oftentimes I will, spice things up in post and leave
Mm-hmm.
room for, just things that may come up when I'm seeing it later on. Like oftentimes I'll clean up a lot of things in post. I'll remove a word and like put a little Easter egg there, like on a street sign or like a storefront, and just sort of add little Easter eggs where I can. And I kind of work. Yeah, and that's what's so fun about music videos, and I think just short form in general, is that, well, obviously in commercials we have like hardly any say in how those turn out, but in music videos we do, tend to live with it, and it becomes like our baby that we have. And I love that I can see it through post, and it's
Right.
it can be a curse as well, but it's good that it's a great thing for a director, I find. That's what I love about music videos. You can see it from all the way from pre-production to writing to, everything in between production, and then all the way through post and delivery. Whereas like, let's say I started out in like TV or film, I would have no idea how post worked, So I'm really grateful for all like these quick turnarounds of all these short jobs that I've been able to have experience on in post.
Do you have like go-to VFX people that like now that?
Yeah, we have a lot of companies that we work with. A lot of Ukrainian companies. And then on like, commercials, oftentimes it's like the agency sort of picking these bigger post houses that, are monstrous companies, and
they get to pay for.
Yeah, that they pay for. But yeah.
Sorry, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask one more kind of very specific kind of craft question, which is about like typography. Like a lot of your videos, I mean, a lot of music videos nowadays will start with text, something interesting. I was looking at Bang Bang, the opening, and
oh yeah,
like, how do you have like a favorite font? Like, how do you go about that? Is that just something that you're in edit and you're like, let's put a title on here?
Yeah, sometimes the video calls for a title. Like there's like space for it. It's like the intro of the song, or like if it's like any sort of narrative, oftentimes a title just like feels nice. I don't throw titles or like directed by at the end on like just anything. I tend to like save it for ones that have a little more of like a cinematic narrative storytelling element to it. So I mean, yeah, it really just, like anything, it's, you want to find the font or style that just feels like the style of the video, and that can take a long time. And sometimes I'll work with a graphics person to do that, or sometimes it's me and the editor just like fucking around with fonts and being like, yeah, that one. Rarely does that make it, but sometimes it does. Sometimes I'll put it on like if I feel like it's a big video and I'm like, oh, I need my name like literally on this thing, like I'll do that. But I don't like to do it on just anything. I don't know. I can feel gratuitous, but
I see a lot of your videos recently are shot in 4:3.
I know. I need to stop doing that. It was like, it was like trendy for a second just to like switch it up. And, it's, yeah.
I mean, counterpoint, it is the best format for portraits, and performance videos are all portraiture,
and
right?
fashion,
so like, yeah.
So I think sometimes
so
and it's a choice, like you want to, obviously it's a choice, but like every decision just adds up and creates the overall feeling. And I think sometimes for 4:3, which I've been doing a lot, I think nostalgia is just really big right now. So people have been doing it for like a bit of like a nostalgia feel. Like if you want to do something that feels kind of Y2K, you wouldn't make it like 2:35 or anything. You wouldn't make it that aspect ratio. You make it like a 4:3.
I want to hear about Hannah's breakpoint.
We got to pay
it off. Yeah, the breakout.
Yes. So I was doing makeup and I was editing for other people all the time. I was always on set. I was always working for other directors and, getting on set and just kind of being just really like actively like, what do you need? I can do it. And one shoot, I was working on a video for this artist, and the video commissioner, Jeff Panzer, who was like this big like hip hop video commissioner, was the commissioner on that shoot. And I had already been editing some videos for his, some of his videos for his other artists. And so we had like a little bit of like a email relationship. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go meet Jeff Panzer. So I go on set and I'm like, hey, it's Hannah, Lux Davis. And, I was cutting this video for you and I'm doing makeup today. Hey, what's up? And it was like, kind of like, oh, well, hi. Oh my God, you're doing makeup today. And on set, I was just really active and just like helping out wherever it was needed. I remember I was like moving some stuff around that was like needed to be moved for like art department. And he was just noticing that I was just really, eager to help. And so we had like a nice chat that day. Later, he sends me a treatment to write. And he's like, hey, I got this video. Maybe you can write a treatment for it. I'm like, oh, great. Who is it?
Wait, he knew you were a director.
Yeah, he knew I was a director because I was also editing. So he knew that like editing was like to help me direct. And I think he was a little startled by the fact that I was now on set doing makeup, not for his artist, but for like the background and like the featured talent and all that. So he's like, okay, I got this treatment. We need a treatment for this artist. The artist is Lil Wayne, Drake, and Future. They're all on one track together. And I was like, excuse me? And so I was like, okay. And I was like, this is such a long shot. And I remember it was over Christmas break and I was at my parents' house and I was just like, holy shit, I have no idea what to do. And this is also like back in the days when treatments just took forever. Remember when treatments would just take forever? You're like, I just can't think of anything. Like in the beginning of your career as a director, it's like,
I don't feel like that, but yeah.
It's just like, in the beginning of my career, I remember just like spending weeks on treatments being like, oh my God. And I was obsessing over it. So here I was obsessing at my parents' house over this treatment that I had to do for these huge artists and this like really big song. And, I was like, I don't know. And so I just started throwing things out on the paper and I was just like, this scene and this scene and this scene. And then there'll be like blood on these girls and there's like a bed and water. And I was like, okay, here it is. So then I'm tech scouting another video and I get a call from my rep at the time that I had booked the video. They liked my idea that they wanted me to do the video. And I was like, I freaked out and I was like, holy shit, this is going to be the one. And so, the budget was like, it was not great, but it was good for me at the time. And, here I am going to like work with these artists that I was like terrified of, like these, they were huge and everybody had heard of them. It was like a huge deal. A lot of people had pitched, concepts for this. So I was like beating out other directors. It was a big deal. So, obviously I like put everything I could into the video and it was called Love Me, Bitches Love Me. And it was like this dark high fashion sort of concept. This was like, I forget what year it was, maybe 2012. Was it sooner than that? Maybe 2012. And so back then that was like a very like new idea, just like dark high fashion for like this world and this genre of hip hop and like, and these guys. And so, on set, I go out and I meet the artists and Lil Wayne was the absolute sweetest. He was so cool. He called me Miss Hannah and was like very polite. And then with Drake, I go over and I see the commissioner talking to Drake. And he's like, okay, Hannah's over here. She's the director. And I hear him go, wait, there's a female directing this? And it was like, I'm telling you, it was like a different world back then. And
that is crazy.
And so then I go and I meet him.
And it's not that long ago.
No, it was totally crazy. Now, like everybody's working with women. It's like no big deal. But back then it was like, there's a female directing this? Are you sure about this? It was crazy. It was, you could feel that like,
were you nervous?
I was so nervous. And then with Future, I was such a dork. I was like, hi, Future. My name's Hannah. And it was like, I remember what I was wearing. I was wearing this like leopard skirt. My hair was bleach blonde. It was such a mess. I was wearing these like crazy silver Doc Martens. And it's like,
do you feel like you need to look kind of cool when you go on that set? Like
thought,
you're making a statement?
I thought I looked really cool. Let's just put it that way. There's photos from that set and I'm like, what was I doing? Of course. But yeah, and then meeting Future was wild. And then the video, was so much fun. It was like, I think it was just one day, but it was a long day. And
that video has 540 million views on YouTube.
Yeah, no, it was
over 500 million views.
The song was huge. It was a huge song. Yeah. And then on that set, Sierra came by because she was dating Future at the time. And then so I met Sierra and she was super friendly. And she, we got to talking, which was like, oh my God, I'm talking to Sierra. Because when you're starting out in your career, anybody who is a big deal, like before you were directing, you could probably relate to this. Anybody who was a big deal, a big artist before you were even a director, you're like, holy shit. So like these artists they were big deals. Now I'm working with artists that like started like 5 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's a different feeling.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like obviously
it's like legends.
Grew up knowing who they are.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. Like I worked with Avril Lavigne. Holy shit, I died.
Sure.
So so I'm meeting Sierra and I'm like freaking out that I'm like talking with her. And then, so I'm like, wow, I'm talking to Sierra. This is great. So then the video came out. It was a huge success. People were like, holy shit, who did that video? It was just different for these hip hop guys. It was just something different for the genre. It was just something, I'm not saying the video was groundbreaking, but it was different for the genre. Yeah. So then from there, I ended up doing another video with Future and Lil Wayne. And this one had Nicki Minaj on it. So then I'm now working with Nicki Minaj. And then Sierra also comes by this.
So Lil Wayne is like, hey, good job last time, female director. Come do the next one.
Oh, he was cool. It was Drake, who I guess is cool. But he was the one who was like, there's a female.
Oh, Drake.
Yeah,
was
which is funny.
I mean, Drake, it looks like a little kid in that.
He really does. He really does. But yeah, so from there I did the video with Drake, Future. There was a few other, Birdman was on that. I forget the names of the other guys. I'm blanking. But it was called Rich Gang. It was the name of their like little crew. And so I did that video. Paris Hilton was in it. Christina Milian was in it. Sierra came by set. I got to talk to Sierra some more. And now I've worked with Nicki Minaj. And back then, it was a small list of directors that Nicki Minaj would work with. So the fact that I had worked with her, she had a good experience, was great. And then from there, Sierra now had a video. And she was like, I want that director who I met on that shoot. And then she had a track with Nicki Minaj. And so I do a video for her and Nicki Minaj called I'm Out. That was like a big video for me. And then from there, Ariana had a track with Nicki Minaj. And then, like I said, it's a small list of people who can work with Nicki at this time. And they wanted like a female director to come in and do this video that was Ariana Grande, Nicki Minaj, and Jessie J. So that was Bang Bang. So like that little trajectory of a few videos is really what kicked it all off, because that's when I met Ariana.
And then just momentum explodes from there.
Yes.
Cool. Rad.
Your website is insane. First of all, I don't know if this is every music video you've ever directed, but it's like
it's not
100 music videos.
It's definitely not.
You have so much work. You've worked with every single person that's worth working with. Like, are you like you're a brand, like, you're based on this story, like the only, small list of directors that certain artists would work with. Are you in a place now where you still have to like compete for jobs, or are you kind of getting like 100 jobs a year and you're choosing 12 of them?
No, definitely. It's still competitive as hell out there. And it's definitely more competitive now than I think ever, because there are fewer videos being made. And I think there's like the anomalies, like a big Dua Lipa video. There's a big Lenny Kravitz video. There's big Taylor Swift videos. There's a bit, there's a couple that will just go big. And there's not a lot in that middle world of, and there's a lot of little ones, but it's really hard to, be like, hey guys, I'm going to go direct a smaller budget video. It's hard to once you become like in a certain category, you also don't want to be looked at as somebody who can play in the lower budget level.
Sure. It's like a version of golden handcuffs, right? Like if you're at a certain level and then you kind of go back a little bit,
Yeah, but sometimes there are exceptions, of course. Like, like you see directors suddenly like, oh, my favorite band needs a video. Of course, I'm going to do this thing. But it's definitely it's a trickier business, and it's like I said, there's like no transparency in it, and it becomes, I don't want to sound jaded or anything, but it really has become a really hard world to navigate, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so, like, how many treatments are you writing? Like a month?
Honestly, not that many. I think last year I probably did, if I look at like commercials included, oh my God, I probably only did like 12 for videos, you know?
Commercials and music videos.
No, commercials, I'm not including in those. I don't have all those saved on my Dropbox. But yeah, for music video ones, and oftentimes you'll write a treatment and there's not even a video in play yet, but you're like trying to work with the label to find money to make something happen. And then like, it'll just go away. So it's
right. To your point about like product placement and all that.
Exactly.
It's almost like making an indie film. It's like everything has to line up in order for it to get
except you have these like huge stars. It's
but
like
still,
an indie film, but we have Jesse Eisenberg.
No, but kind of though. It's like you have to find product placement to pay for a whole video. And sometimes as a director, you're eager to go down that route to like make a cool project, but it just doesn't pan out. And then it just fizzles away. So last year there was a lot of that. The year before that, there was a lot of that. It was definitely different before the pandemic. But then, with the pandemic, the strikes, just everything that was happening over the last few years, it's just really a different landscape with how people are consuming things and where labels want to spend their money. And they're really relying on like production companies and directors to sort of help put money together, which is very, very different.
So out of, and tell me if you don't have to answer this, but out of like 12 treatments that you wrote last year, how many did you end up shooting?
Let's see. Oh, wait, I was looking at the wrong thing. I did 1, 2, 3, 4. I only did 5 videos last year. Yeah, 5. So I think I did more than 12. I'm looking at the wrong thing. 5 videos last year, which is, very, very slow.
Yeah. I mean, if it's 12 treatments and 5 videos, I'll take that ratio for sure.
I think it was more treatments than that. I think I had this wrong here. I think hang on. Yeah, there's a lot more. I don't want to waste my time counting.
It's just crazy to like see your body of work and be like, there's a job she didn't get,
Yeah, but for example, like 2018, I wasn't doing as many like commercials. Like I wasn't like in commercials yet. I really kind of broke into commercials in 2021. So like in 2018, I did 16.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, wow. So it's and then last year I did 5. So
yeah,
I was also getting married in 2018, so I was like really ruthless and taking everything. Sure. I was hustling.
Yeah. Good. Well, listen, Hannah, we could talk to you for another hour and a half, no problem.
I'm sorry, I was totally rambling. Please edit me to take out some things. Honestly,
we love it. It truly has been so. This is why we do the show. It's like really fun to talk to people, like. Especially like when you have like a common enough background, like there's a little bit of a shared history. It's really fun. And directors don't get to talk to each other very much. So like, that's why we get like to do the show,
Totally. I love what you guys are doing. And I think it's really cool that like the next generation, there's not as much gatekeeping that's happening. I think there's a lot of resources for, aspiring or young directors to really just like get out there and find resources to really find mentors. Like when we were starting out, it was just like so secretive.
Yeah.
Well, we'd have to watch the behind the scenes on the DVDs and stuff.
Yeah.
To find out how things were being done.
Yeah, truly.
Unpaid endorsements.
We've been talking about music so much. I'm going to go with something really nerdy. I've been on this kick of like just looking for artists that I like to write to and stumbled upon Nathan Johnson, who I'm going to go out on a limb and say is Rian Johnson's brother. Because
Rian Johnson, the director,
because he is composed the scores for all of Rian Johnson's movies except for Star Wars. And you can guess why, but they're really like minimalistic and fun and lilting and like melody driven, which is kind of nice. You know, sometimes film scores can just be so ambient that there's nothing to sink your teeth into. Mm-hmm. But specifically, I love the Brothers Bloom motion picture soundtrack. I've been really enjoying writing too, actually.
That's cool.
So yeah. I skipped the movie. Like, I think, a lot of people did. And I bet now we realize it's better than we thought. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, but he was doing his kind of like madcap mystery thing, but we just hadn't figured it out yet. Anyway, the score's great and then wonderful to write to. So if you want something that's like pleasant, but not too in your face, the Brothers Bloom soundtrack is my unpaid endorsement.
Amazing.
Nathan Johnson.
Taking notes.
Cool. Hannah, what you got?
I'm really into Charli XCX. She is just like, I think just the coolest. And I think a lot of artists are trying to hop onto that cool, but she's that level of cool. So she's somebody I'm always just like, she's so on the pulse, but like on her own stratosphere of just like cool. I know I'm using that word a lot, but it's like truly she is that word. No, she's the best. She's fun. And she's just like a really down to earth person who just wants to always just get in there and make the best shit. So that's always fun as a director.
Kaplan, take us home.
I have a weird one. It was my son's 3rd birthday yesterday. This is basically only helpful for you if you have young children, but awesome gift idea for young children. We got him Hungry Hippos, the game from our childhood. It's like $15 at Target. And he has not left it out of his sight since we bought it. He was like, forced us to let him bring it to school and like keep it in his cubby. And we took him, my daughter had gymnastics practice, and we brought him along, and he's just like just banging on the Hungry Hippos, and just like all these other kids were walking. I mean, there's like 100 kids at gymnastics of every age, and everyone's like, I want to play Hungry Hippos, and there's 4 hippos. So like
people are lighting up and like,
it's like, it's just, and even as an adult, I was sitting on the floor of the gymnastics place playing Hungry Hippos. It's just like, as we're all parents of young kids, like everyone's like, what should we buy your kid? And you're like, I don't know, just give them money for their college savings account or whatever. But Hungry Hippos, it's a good one from our childhood that still holds up.
Hell yeah.
I think those classics, there's a reason they're classic, right? Yeah.
Yeah. They had like Robo Sock'em Lock'em or whatever. Like
Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Yeah.
But I feel like that, I don't know.
Too violent.
Yeah, that's like a lot. My kid is just really obsessed with bubbles right now. So I think anything bubbles related.
Oh, for me, please do not give us any. We have like gallons of bubble juice in the garage.
Oh, it's just
stop giving us bubbles.
Kid crack. It's really the coolest stuff ever. So bubbles are a really big hit in our house. Anytime there's a bubble, we're just like all over it.
Well, if people want to find out more about what's going on with you, I know you're on Instagram, right? Hannah Lux Davis.
Yep, Hannah Lux Davis.
Kind of the best place to keep.
That's the best place.
Keep track of you.
And out here doing videos, commercials, and hopefully doing a feature film very soon. It's been a long road to find the right project that we can get financing for, attach stars to. It's such a puzzle, and got to get one out there, and then hopefully the floodgates will open. But yeah.
Well, you got to come back here when that's happening and tell us about it, because we can easily talk for another hour about like why you even need to make a feature when you've got this like awesome career with all these awesome people.
It'd be great to focus on one job at a time, just really sink your teeth into one job. But yes, thank you.
If you all have any questions for us or want us to forward anything on to Hannah Lux Davis, you can email us at justshootitpod@gmail.com. You can find us across all social media at justshootitpod. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at @okaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Enlow across all social media. This episode was edited by Noah Bayshore and produced by him as well. Thanks, Noah. With additional producing by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist Jazar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.